Arch Lending is building the most transparent borrowing experience in crypto. Get industry-leading rates from 8.49% APR, borrow against Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana, and receive USD or USDC within minutes. Your assets stay protected with qualified custody, no rehypothecation, and verifiable segregated addresses. As your collateral grows, unlock more liquidity, adjust your line anytime, and extend your term with a single click. And with 24/7 white glove support, you're never on your own. Arch Lending, simple tiers, public pricing, market-leading rates at every size. Check them out at archlending.com/debates. Again, it's archlending.com/debates. Use code debates to get 50 basis points off your APR on your crypto-backed loan today. What's up? Welcome to the debate room. We have some OG Bitcoiners that I'm so happy to have. And Dustin, what's going on? Have you built any more trophies?
Well, since we have the OG Bitcoiners, I'm going to give some advice. If you ever find yourself having to dance on video as a male, putting both fists up in the air and then shaking them vigorously, probably not conveying the theme that you're going for.
I know what video you're talking about. I saw Lil Bubble comment, you know, hey, man, you have my phone number. This is completely unnecessary.
I mean, listen. And if you're gonna do it, keep your mouth shut. Like, please. Like, I just sometimes, man, I got like dancing nurses vibes from it. But it's funny because the caption from Saint Sailor was very much on topic for what we're talking about today. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about, what should we be doing with our Bitcoin? Should we just be holding it, hodling it? We're going to do some price predictions. But first, before we start, I just want to do a shout out to you, Dustin, because this is what you were up to this weekend, building this trophy with Brock. Very cool. So I don't care. You have anything to say for yourself about that?
I don't know if you've seen how big mad the basically whole world is at me right now, but I could not care less. It remains. It was great to see you as always, but B, people are we knew when we did this, like, that we would get the reaction that we did, but like the views talk, like, everybody is losing their ever-loving minds over the giant golden statue of President Trump at Trump Doral now, and I could not be having more fun at their expense. So cry harder, cry louder. Oh my God. I love being lectured on the Bible from a bunch of people who boo God at their convention, probably have never even read, but like, I saw on the internet, now I'm a Bible expert.
Look, I don't care what political side you're on. This is crazy. First of all, also, I look paraplegic in my dress that I'm wearing here. I look like I don't have any arms.
That's funny.
with you and Brock.
You told me that guy see it, but the other thing I'll say about at some point the Dustin statue is going up somewhere. I'm not sure where, but we're gonna make that happen.
I don't know how you pulled it off. Your background is filled with the most random stuff that you accomplish, and somehow you did this with Brock Pierce, right? Kyle Kemper.
Yeah, so we had a good crew. Pastor Burns and Brock were absolutely critical in helping us get this done. I mean, it took us almost. So we were supposed to we were supposed to give the statue to the president at the rally at the Capital One Center at the inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
And when the plans got changed because of the weather, we got canceled. And we spent 2 years trying to navigate how we get it. And finally, Trump called like 10 days before. It was like, we need it at the golf tournament. And so we had to scramble to get it done. But I mean, the pictures don't do it justice. Like, I don't think people realize just how insanely large the statue is. It's amazing.
Well, you pulled it off. It's very impressive. I thought this was a joke for a while, but you did it. So
I think with one of the things I love is like people's reactions to me is like probably 90-10. They think I'm just trolling.
Yeah.
But it's probably actually in reverse. Like, yes, I'm trolling, but yes, there really is a giant gold statue of President Trump that I'm going to put up somewhere.
You never know what you're going to get with Dustin Stockton. You don't know. Hi, Nick, our special guest. Thank you for coming on. So you're a Wall Street bond trader. You then became a Bitcoin researcher. You're the author of Layered Money. You are the founder of Bitcoin Layer. And when you speak about Bitcoin and you got in really early, I feel like you do it in a really articulate way that makes it easy for the common person. So you're going to be, perfect for this topic. Thank you so much for coming. And can you let other people know where they can find you?
Of course. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. You can find everything we're doing at thebitcoinlayer.com. And I'm on Twitter at timevalueofBTC.
Awesome. So I know that you think that the bottom is already in. So we're going to get into that some more. I want to know what you think about that, if you still believe that right now. But we're going to bring up Raj too. Hey, Raj. I know you're going to be here for a little bit. Thanks for joining before your meeting. Where can people find you online? And you also speak about Bitcoin very articulately. So it's lovely to have you as well.
I appreciate it. I'm on YouTube. Just my name. If you search for my name, you'll find me. I'm on X. I feel like Bitcoin is a really special thing, and it takes time to really understand it. I think that's probably the only reason why. I do what I do. I love it. I actually had a panel with Nick at the Vegas conference last year, which was pretty awesome.
Cool. Very cool. And Charlie, you bought your first Bitcoin in 2013. You charged all my phones in Dubai several years ago. And we ran into each other again at Anthony Pompliano's lunch. And I knew you looked familiar, but it had just been so many years. And you've just brilliantly transitioned into AI. I feel like you're always on the cutting edge. So thank you for coming, and tell us a little bit about your AI company and what you're doing.
I'm co-founder of BitLayer. For people in the Bitcoin space heard about us, we were one of the BVM research team since 2023. We launched our L2 network, Mainnet, in 2024. We were backed by Bitcoin Magazine, Franklin Templeton, quite a lot of institutional folks, and then the OGs. We work very closely with a lot of Bitcoin miners. We started our AI journey last 12 months. While a lot of the Bitcoiners also pivoting to AI data centers, it was a bit kind of sad to see a lot of OGs sold their Bitcoin, and because we start losing our DeFi users. Some of the Bitcoin OG decide to not putting their Bitcoin in productive mode, but actually start selling. We have to reduce our cost And AI basically saved our company. We reduced our team from 80 people to all the way down to 8. And now we're back to 16 people. And obviously diversified tech stack, not just Bitcoin Web3 tech engineers now, but actually AI engineers. And we built our product. We actually 5x our revenue last 2 months. And yeah, it's been great. We're managing 60 agents full time, 24 hours working for us right now.
Okay, so you're gonna help us use some agents to make us all some money, Charlie?
Maybe start from help you cutting some videos automatically, things like that.
Okay.
Start from something simple, right? Makes money is probabilistic, and you don't want to lose it, right? That's the thing.
That's fair. So speaking of simple, do you feel like, I know that there was a whole Web3 and everything, and then now everyone's like very disillusioned by any of these projects other than Bitcoin. Can we all go around and say like what we think about that? Are we all just Bitcoin only, or what are all of your perspectives? Raj, I'm going to go with you first, so I know you have to leave soon.
Bitcoin only, no crypto, but I like strategy. I like the company. I like stretch, depending on like your time horizon and all that. And I think cash is actually a pretty important part of a portfolio, and I've done a few videos explaining why. If you have a short time horizon, you need cash. Your expenses are paid in cash. If you have Bitcoin, let's say it drops 90%, you lose your job, you're kind of in trouble. So Bitcoin only, as in for the investment side of things, but other than investments, I think you do need some, let's say, stretch, STRC, MSTR, and obviously cash.
Dustin, why are you laughing? Are you laughing because, frankly, I think they have a great marketing company. No,
I actually love the Bitcoin maxis who are like, yo, I'm not just in Bitcoin. I also like master and stretch, like totally not Bitcoin or Bitcoin related.
Well, that does seem to be kind of a popular theme, right? It's like once you get into Bitcoin, then it's like the foot in the door. What else can you do with your Bitcoin? How else can you get a return without going into all of these other altcoins? Because you want to get that higher upside, right? But without going into the altcoins. Dustin's like, just buy some altcoins.
Yeah, well, listen, we can do that debate again, but I'm looking forward to trolling a little bit because Saint Sailor is selling the Bitcoin. So one of the things that you do with the Bitcoin is when the price goes up, you sell it. Listen, it's not me saying it, it's Saint Sailor. Saint Sailor has spoken. He's come down from high and said, like, when the price goes up, you take a little out, you sell it off.
Sailor sold Bitcoin before too, and nobody really said anything about that. But why is everybody calling him out now? I don't really get that. I think he sold like 1,000 Bitcoin before.
All I know is I can find 1,000 quotes of Sailor talking about you never sell Bitcoin, like right? Like are we pretending that we haven't all seen Sailor at conferences talk about like never selling your Bitcoin, don't fall for all the trick, right? It's kind of like the poster child of Bitcoin Maxiism, right?
But there's nuances to that, right? I think there's important nuances where if you can sell and you can get a tax advantage, why wouldn't you sell your Bitcoin? I think that makes sense.
Maxi. Nope.
In the right situation, I think it makes sense. Not selling your Bitcoin. I mean, if you need to sell your Bitcoin and it's tax advantage to you, I think that's a smart decision.
Listen, I don't disagree, but Sailor from 5 years ago would be very upset with that take.
Nick, what do you think about this?
About Sailor specifically and strategy saying that they would be willing to sell. Well, strategy is a hedge fund, has been one for quite some time. It is a long Bitcoin, leveraged long Bitcoin hedge fund, and it has a lot of capital structures. So it does make sense that you would want to sell high and buy low, because that's what leverage players, that's what keeps them in the game. So, I mean, I think it's a natural evolution, but, in terms of what I write about and what I cover as a researcher and as an analyst, I've been covering this field for 8 years. within crypto. I've always and remain a Bitcoin only advocate. Actually, warning against non-Bitcoin crypto my whole time in this arena. I wrote a piece called "Insiders Always Dump" several years ago, showing that the price of altcoins versus Bitcoin always follows the same pattern, and it's the insiders always dump pattern. So I think that that's important. But I'm a macro researcher, and I approach portfolios from a global macro perspective. I understand that most people do not have a 100% Bitcoin portfolio. So I'm an advocate of U.S. equities, and have been so for quite some time. And I think that that's an important complement to Bitcoin in a portfolio. I think what Raj said about cash is very relevant. And because I don't give investment advice or run a shop, I can easily, explain to people that this is why you need this asset class and that asset class. I think Bitcoin is an important fixture. US equities are. Cash is important for everybody to the right tune. So everybody will require a certain portion of their portfolio in cash, and that's highly dependent on what stage of your life you're in, how old you are, et cetera, if you have a family or not, business or not, job or not, et cetera. And I think that gold is relevant, has been a part of my macro frameworks for long before I was a Bitcoiner. And so the extent to which people should own gold in their portfolio still is, something that I'm working on. And to say that I had some absolute answers, would be an oversimplification. But that's generally how I approach things. I think all young people should have Bitcoin without a question. And I actually think young Americans should have U.S. equities as well.
I mean, poor Nick, it sounds like missed the boat on Pokemon cards and the NFTs. Happens to all. We all get sidelined, Nick. It happens.
I will say that there was one moment when I was tempted on an NFT. There is a hip hop artist who was releasing NFTs that were some derivative of some song royalty. And but that's the closest I got. And on God, that's the truth.
Was it Soulja Boy?
It was not.
Okay, I remember that one. I guess I'm the only idiot who has a wallet full of like hundreds of NFTs. I'm guessing.
No, I have. Don't worry, Dustin. I'm right there.
I'm the idiot as well. I'm with you.
Yeah. All right. Let's go.
Charlie, what's your craziest NFT that you have? Like,
So
you can answer that any way you want.
Sure. So I'm a Bitcoiner. I only hold Bitcoin now, but I'm actually being criticized by a lot of Bitcoin maxi because I got to know Bitcoin because maxi was selling me hard about proof of work. They were using FPGA miners in 2012. I was being impressed by how you can use hardware to build this new system, which we call this future of money, right? And it was tangible in front of me. I was always a hardware geek. But when you've been presented by a lot of people saying nothing else matters outside of Bitcoin in the world, it was a bit too radical for me. And I always like to poke around what we can do with Bitcoin. From the beginning, I hold Bitcoin since 2012 till now. I've always been like this anti-Bitcoin maxi, but a pro-Bitcoin guy. It's kind of in the middle. We want to put Bitcoin to use because the fundamental thesis I had up to this moment still is if nobody used Bitcoin, everybody's buy and hold. There's no transaction fee. It's a dead chain with nobody making any transaction. That's not sounds like something sustainable because miner needs to contribute in security budget. If there's nobody essentially paying the fees, nobody making transactions, everybody just buy and hold, mine and hold. Why this network worth so much money? If it's a network has no revenue and a lot of people are not incentivized to maintain the security, it's a commons of tragedy or zombie thing, right? So if we're talking about $1 million dollars per coin, we're talking about a very meaningful, useful network. And I would argue a lot of people hate Bitcoin because Bitcoin cannot do shit outside of making a slow payment. That was the reason Lightning, Stacks, all the sidechain, right, and all the Bitcoin DeFi stuff, right? Trying to make sense of it, right? So I was idiot in terms of NFT, because especially with ordinals. I made a ton of Bitcoin with my ordinals flip. I was lucky, but in the perspective of NFT, ordinals is just Bitcoin version of NFT. Majority of them are useless, and now majority of them become like worthless, right? Nobody traded on them. It become dead, just like NFT and Ethereum. So back to Dana, your question. I hate majority of the Ethereum NFT because essentially it's just metadata on Ethereum. You're not buying the real art. The real art is not really the ownership. You are owning that metadata that represent that whatever art people socially believe in. And I think it's all reality already. Whatever monkey NFT you're buying, or Azuki, or whatever, or goblins, it's all garbage. It's all going to zero. And a lot of my friends lost a ton of money. You essentially are buying very expensive party tickets to go to their ApeCoin, whatever parties. I did that in my Bitcoin version. I was day one on BRC20. I was a proud Pizza Ninja, whatever ordinals I own. Like, I was lucky to saw the top. I sold some of them. Otherwise, I lost a lot of Bitcoin I own with my gas fees. But my thesis maybe, and my perspective maybe is a bit different, right? I wanted to put some of my Bitcoin into use, but I will park some of my Bitcoin as a legacy for my son. I will never sell, forever in the cold wallet. But, I have my concern. If Bitcoin, nobody use it, nobody transact it, how come all the miners going to keep the security budget, right? Like, that's why what I've been seeing. A lot of the Bitcoin miners I know, they have been holding Bitcoin for over a decade. They actually sold the last 6 months. They actually sold.
So I hear you about, Bitcoin needing to have some sort of utility to continue in the future. But Nick, I would assume, Nick or Raj would say, well, Bitcoin doesn't need to be passed around like gold. So can't we use all of these AI transactions on blockchain, use something else, some faster version of a token or something like that, and then just use Bitcoin for a store value? Nick and Raj, would you say that, or what would you guys say?
Bitcoin is used, and I think it's calling buy and hold not using, I think, is a mistake. I think that's a huge mistake because it misunderstands what Bitcoin is. An economy needs fast transactions. That is without a doubt. And there are methods to do those fast transactions in dollar terms or in Bitcoin terms. And those will continue. And that's its own balance, where Bitcoin might take a portion of global transaction activity. It might never take a majority of global transaction activity. But Bitcoin, when it's bought and held and then transferred from one custody arrangement to another, transferred from one long-term holder to a new buyer. For example, long-term holders, OGs, over the last couple of years have sold, almost 1 million Bitcoin, and the ETFs and Saylor have bought 1 million plus Bitcoin. So that is a transfer of Bitcoin from party A to party B. That is happening every single day, tens of thousands of times a day. So to say that Bitcoin isn't used is not, that just because the blockchain isn't incredibly busy 24 hours a day does not mean that Bitcoin is not used. And that slow transaction that, you cite it when, somebody needs to use the blockchain, that is everything. The fact that it's decentralized and uses a decentralized mining network of nodes and nodes that are just keeping transaction record, that is using it. And Bitcoin at 1.5 trillion in market cap is the market saying that use case for Bitcoin is legitimate and well established. Bitcoin does not need to be the transaction currency for any portion of the global economy to reach success. I think we have 17 years of empirical data that proves that. Now, I'm also an advocate of Lightning Network. So don't get me wrong. I think Lightning Network extends Bitcoin's usability to a new realm and has proven that out, but it's small. and the adoption is relatively slow, I would say, slower than I would want to see it. But it's because people don't want to sell their Bitcoin and buy a Coca-Cola with it or a coffee. They just don't want to, because why would you actively sell good long-term money? It's stupid. So Bitcoin, we have to be clear about what it is. And my book, Layered Money, explains that for transactions as well as credit extension, it's not the same function as store of value over the long term.
I guess that's the divergence here, right? You know, a lot of transaction can be paid with stablecoin. You know, we have all the stablecoin chain like Stripe launching Tempo, Circle launch Arc, all these buzzwords and news and all that. Bitcoin is not the best network to settle payments, but Satoshi wrote the first article in the white paper. It was peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Different people have different opinion, and I thought it was the future of money, processing trillions of dollars every day. And you know, your argument is right. It doesn't have to be like that. That's already worth 1.2 trillion,
but
and this was
Charlie,
100 trillion.
This is the point. It is that tool. It's just not at the frequency of global economic activity. For example, you know, I've been honest about this over the last several months to a year, that when I hit 2021, 2022, I stopped stacking Bitcoin because I had a business to grow and invest. And yes, I had to sell Bitcoin for working capital when I didn't want to, but it helped bridge my past career as a bond trader to my current career, helped me write books, and it helped me hire people. And guess what? I even remember it to this day. Part of that welcome to the Bitcoin layer that I gave my first two guys was a Bitcoin bonus. I gave them sats. And so you can't say that, you know, and I advocate long-term holding. So, but that doesn't mean I didn't sell when I needed to, and it did exactly what I needed it to do. I sent it to the exchange, sold it, and transferred dollars into my account, and it all happened, you know, the wire was the longest part. You know, of course, but it did exactly what I needed it to do, which is store value over a long time horizon. And then I used the blockchain. And guess what? I used it when I bought Bitcoin and sent it to my own storage. And then I used it again when I updated my storage situation. And I use Bitcoin for some of my expense and revenue side. I mean, it's a very small percentage, let's say less than a fifth of my activity, but I still do activity denominated purely in Bitcoin, no dollar rails, my own, you know, wallet activity all the time. So it's not unused, it's used. And I do want to emphasize that.
I think we can use that 100 times more, 1,000 times more. This is not enough, not at all.
I don't disagree with that
every
at all.
5 years.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Raj had to go. He has a 6:30
Yeah, I was
meeting.
waiting for Raj to give comments, but listen, I'm a Bitcoin lover. I wish Bitcoin can be more useful. This can go another 1,000x. With these use cases, I don't think that's kind of the convincing route to have another 1,000x.
That I don't disagree with at all. That, you know, Bitcoin can be used more and its application can be expanded as fiat at the margin declines in its usability for the rest of the world, right? If you can't use fiat well, then Bitcoin is a great alternative. The dollar is, and stable coins are really trying to step into that role. and fill the bad fiat void, which is enormous. I mean, there's billions of people that are subject to terrible fiat. And so the dollar and Bitcoin are actually in a little battle for that portion of the population.
So I'm going to ask this question to all of you guys. Someone who asked me this question just today, which is perfect timing. And I think all of you guys don't like when I use the word web. Well, maybe Dustin, you're fine with it. But this is the exact wording. Okay. So looking where interesting companies are emerging around new products in the current Bitcoin, Web3, and crypto market, how are they attracting liquidity, and how are teams and users adopting their strategies? Looking for perspective on current trends and projects. So this is, I don't know too much about how much this person knows about, Bitcoin and like that sort of thing, but it's clear that like everyone is starting to merge, AI, like they're trying to figure out how to start applying these things to their business, I think. But right now, like we're in the bottom of the market, or maybe not, I don't know, maybe we're going lower. So how would you answer this question? What do you guys think?
No, so listen, there's a lot of liquidity so to me, the big ones are AI and payments. Like those are the two big things that are being worked on, that there's lots of institutional money willing to come in and back good teams and solve projects. And under those umbrellas falls a bunch of different categories, right? So like for example, the difference, even subtle differences in different stable coins and stablecoin plans is attracting a bunch of different attention. I know teams, I think I know 5 or 6 teams. I guess the other one that I know that there's 3 really solid teams working on is also the identification, like digital identification. So, right, like real ID and everything from proof of human all the way to accredited investor, etc., and how those things move with you on the internet while either completely destroying your privacy or while protecting it, depending on what team is behind putting it together. So those would be the 3 areas to me that are really interesting, and there's a bunch of overlap. I've really been digging deep. It's really interesting to figure out what's going to happen with micropayments and AI agents, and right, like just the raw number of small transactions that's going to start happening between AI agents. I think that's another really fascinating area to like the cutting. That's where the cutting edge and the brightest minds are working, in my opinion.
I'm going to follow up with what Dustin said, especially now that you talked about AI agent. That's exactly what we're trying to work on and building upon that. I think what I saw like last 15 years is more about trying to bring a lot of financial activities on chain, having the distributed system to have more transparent, more on-chain verifiable transaction to send money from A to B across the board, in a fraction of a second, fraction of a cost. With stablecoin or with Lightning or with other infrastructure, that part is already kind of solved. We have more than enough solution from different categories, from different countries did that, right? We have public companies like Circle, now Tether going IPO soon, right? We have more than enough people kind of doing that already. I think for that part, if we talk about 15 years ago, that was a problem. Now it's not a problem. I can easily send my USDT or whatever stablecoin, even my Bitcoin. Although it's slower, as what Nick said, I wish it's faster, but it's not a problem. I can send any money from A wallet to B wallet across this side of the country to the other side of the country. I live in Singapore, now I'm in LA. It's not a problem. What is the problem right now is there's still a lot of friction, right? You're talking, Dustin talked about on-chain identity. All the AI agents gonna create another maybe 10 billion new user, which is not a human, it's actually AI, managed by human, but actually AI doing all kinds of things on behalf of the human. We're talking about microtransaction, we're talking about micropayments, we're talking about things human doesn't even have the bandwidth to process. It's 24/7. is doing such a small little fraction of dollars, like $0.001. Why would you human even bother to open your MetaMask or whatever Web3 wallets to click that button multiple times to finalize it? That kind of use case will happen in a lot of small little things across gaming or whatever little things. An agent will be the entity of users. And I think Base, a bunch of other chains are so hyping around, oh, AI Jinx is the big thing. We have to be on top of it because they see the growth is getting to the plateau. We only have 8 billion population. Like among the 8 billion, I think at least 2 billion already know Web3 or use Web3 one way or the other. Web3 was the word came up by Gavin Wood, right, who was the CTO of Ethereum in 2014 in Berlin. In the beginning, when I heard about this, nobody gave a shit. Over my language. Literally, nobody couldn't care less. What is Web3? You don't even know what is Web2. Tell me more about it, Web3. Nobody cared until DeFi became a thing in 2020, right? And now everybody talk about it because Web3 with DeFi, it makes some people made money and it draw a lot of attention and it brings some adoption. So I think now, honestly, in my network in Singapore, in Hong Kong, people have been talking about Web4 now. People are talking about Web4 because they think Web3 was dumb. Now is really smart frontier model of AI. We're talking about pretty smart Web3. Web3 was dumb because it was easy to get hacked by North Korean. It was stupid user experience. You have to click all these pop-up window in MetaMask. It was so bad user experience. And a lot of the DeFi protocols, respectfully, is not institutional ready. A lot of institutional TradFi people having a hard time to onboard that. It was not really good. So hopefully, whatever it's AGI or Web3 or Web4, whatever the buzzword, it's about using AI as a tool to make all the solution software smarter, better, cheaper, and more user friendly, right? So I think that's kind of all the common goal. And obviously, there's a different approach around it. What we are doing in Coco is actually not a Web3. It's actually a pure AI solution for enterprises. And I think the intersection between stablecoin, payments, Agentify with traditional SaaS will have an intersection, but I think it's not like still like convergent, right? It's like you don't start from one angle then go like this. It's actually two different starting point and eventually will emerge.
We got descending wedge. What I love about Charles, to kick it to Nick too. What I love it, Nick explained, I think really eloquently, as far as Bitcoin. Like, I don't think Bitcoin should try to solve the AI agent micro transaction problem, right? Like I hear a lot of people who want to make Bitcoin into everything. Bitcoin has found its home as the most superior store value and the most pristine collateral. And right, that as Nick explained, Charlie even agreed, and I'm with Charlie. I'm usually the anti-maxi who's still pro Bitcoin, right? But to me, Bitcoin does what it needs to do in the most decentralized way. It was the revolution. It will always be the big dog on the block as a result. It should not try to be every solution to every problem that happens generally in tech and finance. I think that's trying to chase things down that actually dilute where the real value of Bitcoin is. So I'm curious on Nick's take, but I see a lot of synergy between, like, when Charlie's talking about AI and micropayments and Nick's talking about, like, well, no, you can't pigeonhole Bitcoin and say it doesn't do anything. I see a lot of overlap. Like, it's also very much aligned with like how I'm moving through the market.
So, Dustin, I would say that I mostly don't agree with that about Bitcoin shouldn't try to get involved. I think it should. Whether it will win or not on a grand scale, I think maybe is where, you and I might agree more, which is that maybe it won't win the vast majority. But with Lightning Network, and I'm no computer science expert, but with Lightning Network and associated payment channel technology and that type of second layer Bitcoin technology, it is very possible very likely that Bitcoin in a second layer way can be used in agentic economies very well, and for microtransactions incredibly fast, not using the chain. I would hope there can be a decentralized way, but even some centralization in that short term before you can take it and settle it off chain. But I think that the fact that the agent to agent commerce is going on the internet, over the internet, it doesn't have to, and therefore shouldn't necessarily touch traditional financial rails. Like if you're going to use a stable coin, for example, and put it even one more step, a Genius Act stable coin in agent to agent commerce, you are now subjecting yourself and the whole economic relationship to United States regulation, the financial system, and everything that goes along with it. So from a decentralization standpoint and a jurisdictional standpoint, the internet is a place where Bitcoin can have a lot of success because it's decentralized. So I hope that, that it's not a massive disagreement that you and I have, but I do think it should try. And I do think it can win in many portions. And I'm a visiting fellow now at Bitcoin Policy Institute. They released a study recently that said the AIs themselves are choosing digital forms of payment. And then within that, they're choosing Bitcoin more often than stable coins in terms of what they might want to transact in. I think that's fascinating. I think there's a lot of work to be done there to discover why the LLMs are making this choice and to understand it better. But I think the fact that the LLMs are already saying we like to use Bitcoin or we like that idea means that the LLM, obviously this sounds like an obvious thing, but the LLM has grokked Bitcoin and understands that it works and that it's a real technology, and it's probably a good thing to choose if you don't know what to choose for money, if you're an AI agent.
Nick, will be lovely to know and to share that research. We are exactly building the things you are saying, right? We have the L2 network, which have very underwhelming demand. We're busy on the AI side. I wanted to see this intersection. It's not necessarily yet. Maybe we need to do more research. Like majority AI large models still use fiat to payments, right? Majority of our customers still using credit cards through Stripe to pay us for the monthly fees. We opened up the stablecoin and Bitcoin payments. 1 out of 100 people use that, right? We are so embedded in the network of Web3. The majority of my clients are the intersection between Web2 and Web3 people. But majority of people, when they have the credit card pop out in Stripe, they use that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of where we are. So if AI agents are using Bitcoin for payment, it's actually decided by large model. I would love to see how we can be useful on that. Our network.
Well, I appreciate the nuanced position, Nick. And I don't disagree at all. I think that Lightning Network has some institutional advantages that can't be overlooked. I mean, what Jack Dorsey's been able to accomplish with Square makes purchasing power and the ability to spend Bitcoin quickly more readily. Like they have a head start in some very key areas as a result of the powerful positions that a lot of the early Bitcoiners currently hold in tech and the economy more broadly. So I don't disagree at all. And the more competition, the better. My general sense is that we'll see a solution that's used for smaller micro payments. We'll see several solutions, right? I've always said this. One of the things that I've always found fascinating about Doge is Doge was started as a joke to be the worst kind of money. Like, oh, we're gonna make it constantly inflate, right? Like the Bitcoiners who built it designed it to be the opposite of Bitcoin and terrible in low odds, but they accidentally stumbled on like a real use case, which is like it's good for micro tipping because people don't want micro tip. Like I don't want end up tipping somebody, right? Like, let's say back in the day when I first started buying Bitcoin, oh, I'm going to tip you 1 Bitcoin, and then have to look back 20 years later and be like, well, I gave this dude $1 million. I think that there actually is a place for inflation and certain currencies that are used in certain ways. And it's why I think we'll see several different solutions come out to solve different parts of these problems. But again, what'll be really interesting, and this has always been the big picture, which is the moment that people stop in their heads denominating in dollars and start denominating in Bitcoin for their savings and for their wealth creation, that's the real game changer. When that starts when that starts happening in people's orientation, it's a whole different ballgame. And you could see it's why it always makes sense, like, to save your money in Bitcoin and not in a inflated currency or like some other inflated project. It's why the limited number, right, the 21 million, that the fixed supply, it's why that was the revolution. And it's why I think savings and the ability to move, it doesn't have to be as fast as it doesn't need to do 10 billion transactions a minute. I just need to know that I can move it from A to B. I mean, we're used to dealing with wires where it takes a week, right? You not available on Saturday and Sunday, and like we could complain that like there's that. Used to be sometimes I'd have to wait half an hour, 45 minutes for Bitcoin transfer, which was kind of annoying. But like at the end of the day, if I wanted to wire somebody money, I was looking at like a half-day ordeal that was also like shrouded in the potential of having to deal with regulators and other nonsense. So,
Nick, do these other guys on Wall Street, like you, whoever you're in touch with, are they kind of trading Bitcoin, or are they kind of like holding it? Do they believe in it at least partially in a store of value? What did they say?
Yeah. So I faced Wall Street. I was on the buy side, which means I worked for an investment manager, and we faced Wall Street, meaning that we are always transacting. That's who we're transacting with at all times. So I have friends on the buy side and I have friends on the sell side. My friends on the buy side many of them are long Bitcoin, and they're not active traders. They're actually not very active traders in general. Buy side people are try to find the winner and hold it, because the training that we get on the buy side is that you add to your winners. It's not a trading mentality. If you watch interviews from some of the best hedge fund managers over the years, one of those consistent lessons that they teach you is concentrated positions is how you build wealth, not diversification. You concentrate, and then you add to your winners in a bull market. You add. Those are like the secrets to success. And so even though I have friends that they're not Bitcoiners, they're long. They're long Bitcoin, and many of them are. It's not like I have, dozens of friends that, you have a few close friends. They're long. My friends on the sell side are less so long. They haven't made the effort to grok it, because I face the fixed income side of these sales and trading shops. They are not they're not involved in Bitcoin on the sell side. So on the buy side, everyone's looking at everyone else's returns. You're looking at every asset out there. Even if it's outside of your universe, you're still thinking about it. Like, guys at my shop are trying to stock pick with each other. We're a bond shop and we don't own stocks, but they're all, trying to find the next winner, the next home run, the next NVIDIA, et cetera. But the sell side guys, they are more of the no coiner variety. I think generally speaking, and I'm actually struggling to think of a sell side guy that I'm buddies with that is nicely and appropriately long Bitcoin. Not that I have dozens of friends on the sell side, but I'm struggling to actually have one come to mind. Whereas on the buy side, and that's not the case. Because a lot of those guys and I were on the desk at the same time, and so they see it, and then maybe they're not in as early or as much, but they eventually they see the returns and they want to get involved. But I'll just tell a quick story. I was at a big institutional FX conference in Miami in February, and lots of buy side shops were there. Not that many sell side, mostly investment managers. Like that was the core audience. The Fed was there. Some institutional players from around the world were there, and they saw my badge had my name and the Bitcoin Layer on it, founder of the Bitcoin Layer. And I didn't actually know anybody there. So people would see me, they'd strike up a conversation, or they'd see me in the elevator and they would ask me 30 or 90 next. The price was at 60 at the time. And they were just like, we're going to 30 or 90 next? And which means to me, you can read between the lines. These guys are already long. They're well aware. They want to stack more, and they don't know that much about Bitcoin. They're just in the game because they understood at some point that they had to be. And these are not friends. These are just random people I met at this conference. So I hope that answers your question in terms of the extent of the Bitcoiners in my previous world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're always in it. We talk about it all the time. We're in an echo chamber. We just talk to the same people. So it's like, I'm always curious, what are the Wall Street guys saying, or these other people that you interact with, in your older life, your life before you went into Bitcoin, which I know you've been here for a long time. So if you were to, talk to somebody now, and talk about like an ideal portfolio right now in 2026, what would you say? Because you were saying not just all Bitcoin earlier.
Yeah.
What would you say? And I'm sure it depends on the person, the age, etc. But
yeah.
What would you say?
So I'll speak generically. Again, I don't give it financial advice, and I like being a researcher because there's less pressure on me to give you the trading tip. Right.
Yeah.
And sell you the right idea. I'll just share with you really quickly. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago presenting a policy paper on stable coins and how the United States can use stable coins to its advantage on the international stage. And I was in meetings with the executive branch, and they were listening to me because I wasn't trying to sell them a law that would pump my bags. And because if you really think about it, who's going to DC to lobby? Companies are sending lawyers to argue for a law that's going to help them. I just had an idea about Bitcoin. I mean, sorry, not Bitcoin, stable coins, and how the United States government can use stable coins as a tool of statecraft. So I just wanted to say, show you that I'm a researcher first, and that's the way that I approach it. So answering your question, I would step into the shoes of a young person in their 30s, let's say about to start a family or with a young family. They should be heavily invested in Bitcoin. I have a lawyer friend. I told him that he told me his portfolio was about 70% stocks, which means 30% cash and conservative stuff, 70% stocks. And I told him half of that should be in Bitcoin and half of it should be in stocks. So that's about a 1/3 portion of your portfolio as a young person should be in Bitcoin, maybe 1/3 in stocks. and 1/3 in cash, because again, as a young person, you want to have capital to invest in ideas. What if you came up with the greatest idea of all time and all it took was $20,000 of Claude tokens? And
Yeah.
you would actually have a multi-million-dollar idea. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. I would say, oh, you can put 20 down and get a loan of 100 and put together a startup and then try to go raise capital. But now the advice is a little different. Come up with a good idea and go vibe code it up. You should always have some working capital. So I can't really give any generic advice to someone that is, maybe has kids going to college or, has grandchildren to think about. That's a really different realm of my target readers. But starting at, you should be at 100% Bitcoin is, it's not that it's insane. It's just not realistic for people. And so you scale back from that. Well, should you be 50% in Bitcoin? There's a dance that you have to play with all sorts of people, portfolios, their job. How much do they earn? Are they actually able to put away money every month? If you are, and you're actually earning more than you spend on a monthly basis, you should be long as hell Bitcoin and stocks to the degree that you feel comfortable. You should be long as hell. You cannot be underinvested as a young person. If you are, you misunderstand the monetary system completely. If you don't own stuff, if you're hiding in cash, like not cash for working capital for a good idea, but just hiding in cash or investing conservatively, you're missing the point of how this whole system is designed to give people access to credit, and then they spend it into the economy and drives up aggregate demand and prices and asset prices. So you have to understand the system that we're in, and then acting accordingly is to be, as long as you comfortably can, both of these major asset classes.
So in terms of stocks, are you looking at any right now? Are you like, okay, I'm gonna be looking at some of these AI companies? Because I know you still have that traditional background. And also, what do you think about strategy now?
Yeah, so I'm not a stock picker. It's not in my nature. With that being said, the performance of NVIDIA, Micron, some of these companies off of this AI revolution that we're in, and it is a revolution, it's the biggest capital cycle we've ever seen in history. It's just, there's something special about it. I am trying to think about which companies are in the mix and are on the rise and will perhaps attack NVIDIA's 70% profit margins and help to distribute money throughout the economy. And by distribute, I don't mean redistribute. I mean actually distribute, right? When profits are awarded to the shareholders, then they are the ones that go and spend that money into the economy, hire people, build homes, etc. So I'm not going to answer the question on either front because I'm not really a stock picker. It's not what I do. I love interest rates, FX. That's why I love Bitcoin, because it's a macro asset. And I do not hold MSTR, never have. And it's not really my cup of tea. That's really what it is. It's not my cup of tea. It's not that I think it's good or bad. And in fact, when I go on the road and speak to rooms, many people just want to know what I think about MicroStrategy and STRC. It's an interesting conversation to have, but I don't give them much of an answer because I'm not a corporate finance analyst. I really take my work seriously. We've designed a liquidity index called TBL Liquidity. It's proprietary. It was inspired by the research of others, but we built it from scratch. We tested it, we back tested it, we've tweaked it over the last couple of years. It lines up very nicely with Bitcoin's price. We're able to give people at home a buy or sell signal that rotates, every couple months from red to green to red to green as we go through these market cycles. And that's what I do, and that's what I love. So I'll respectfully decline to answer any single equity question, but it's genuine because you won't find it in my portfolio. It's just not, again, it's not my cup of tea. I love macro.
Yeah, I know you're mostly, macro guy. And in terms of like our economy right now, you don't really look at or care so much about, right, where Bitcoin is going in the short term. But if you were to say, okay, what do you think is going to happen by the end of this year? What do you think?
Well, I do care a lot about where Bitcoin is going in the short term. Always, I'm actually a tick watcher, so it's not that I don't look closely. I look extremely closely, and I care a lot about where it's going today, next week, next month, because first of all, I care about it. My readers care about it, and we all have to make decisions. Meaning, let's say you struck a huge business deal next week. You get 100 grand in the bank. What are you going to do with that money? Are you going to go all into Bitcoin, keep it all in cash, invest in stocks? What are you going to do with that money? So every person out there has an opportunity to make a decision actively about whether it's a good time to buy or sell Bitcoin. They might, have to send a kid to school, and they might need to decide, do I sell stocks? Do I sell Bitcoin? Or do I borrow the money because it's not a good time to sell my assets? And so I do care a lot about the short term. And here's another reason I care about the short term, because the short term price action tells us the truth about what's going on in the asset today. And so if Bitcoin was crashing 60, 50, 40, 30, what does that say about Bitcoin? It says a lot. But Bitcoin going from 120 to 60, bouncing up to 80 and consolidating, we're now in, the third month of consolidation after Bitcoin's down. What does that say about Bitcoin? It says Bitcoin is not dead, which is a really good thing that's a really good observation to make. Sometimes it's binary. Like, is it dead or is it not? Well, if it's not dead, what does that say? Does that say it's going to 1 million in 7 years? I would argue, yeah. Yes, I would argue that. And so I care a lot about the short-term price action. I care about how Bitcoin responds relative to stocks. Stocks are at an all-time high. If Bitcoin was making new 3-year lows or 5-year lows with stocks at an all-time high, would that be saying something? Yes, it would be saying something disastrous about Bitcoin. But instead, we're looking at Bitcoin, that's around several of its long-term moving averages, above its 200-week. I don't know exactly where it is today, but Bitcoin, the long-term trend is still pretty strong. And the bounce and consolidation that we've had over the last 3 months is very material. So one of the lines I've drawn on my chart, and I would argue that it's significant, is right around 73,000. I think it's a very important area to hold, and I do expect it to hold. And if it does hold, I expect amazing things from Bitcoin over more of a medium term. So I think Bitcoin should make a charge to 6 figures again this year. I think it can challenge the all-time high again this year. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't, though. And I do not expect Bitcoin to go below the 60s again. Could it wick below 73 and make me very nervous? Yes. If it traded back in the 60s with stocks at an all-time high and the threat of inflation, which, by the way, transmits through our liquidity index via bond volatility and higher interest rates, if Bitcoin trades low with liquidity where it is, and let's say it stays stable and stocks continue to do well, that is not a good sign. And so your belief in Bitcoin should never be blind. It should be backed up by analysis, historical patterns, standard deviation of returns, things of that nature. And so I'm actively doing all of that stuff every day. I have a team. I have a quant. His name is Augustine. He's phenomenal. He helped me build Tiba Liquidity. And then we have a new head of Bitcoin research, Johan Bergman, out of the Netherlands. And he's really upped our game in terms of being able to describe the state of Bitcoin's market. Is it a good time? Is it a bad time? Is it capitulation? Is it euphoria? And where are we? So I think we're in a good zone for Bitcoin. I started stacking. That was the end of the story that I started with, selling a little Bitcoin in the early 2020s to finance some working capital. But yeah, I'm back in the stacking side of things for the first time in quite some time. It started this year. It started in the 60s. I actually looked at it the other day because I wrote that I felt the bottom at around 64 when we had that Jane Street news. My first buy was at 68, some more in the 70s, and just back in a stacking mindset. It's nice. My wife gave me the nudge. She said it's time again, which is great to be on the same page as your partner from that standpoint. And so I hope that answers your question about portfolios.
Dustin, are you in the stacking mood right now as well, like Nick?
Always.
Yeah, but you're
And
always like that.
everyone told me to be like, I don't know. I think things are going to go bad.
Dustin is always optimistic, and that's why he's so fun to be around, because he just wills things into existence. Whereas in Nick, I know you look at charts really closely, but I would assume that you also have this kind of long-term view where you're not really touching what you're investing in either. It's more like, okay, when I need some liquidity, you're going to sell some off for that. And then, like what you said, you're stacking when you get these really good opportunities for then the next run, which you think is going to happen this year. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that the economy is going to accelerate in the back half of the year. I think that that's going to be supportive, and that will get bullish energy back more broadly. So I do expect that before the end of this year. And the AI revolution in the U.S. economy is a solid portion of that. And yes, you characterize it well, that Bitcoin is the best asset to own long-term from an asymmetric perspective. The asymmetry of returns in Bitcoin is unmatched. I think US equities will do very, very well over similar time horizons, but the asymmetry of Bitcoin is a way to play not only general bullishness of human activity, but also to play geopolitical dynamics and the natural tendency of politicians and policymakers to make their problems go away with spending, which we have, you can't ignore socialist populist tendencies that are everywhere on the planet. Some of them, I would argue, the money it really just gets wasted. And some of it is an important part of the social construct, at least that we have in this country, such as unemployment insurance. And there are aspects of the welfare system, and I would even put Medicare and Social Security in there. They're fixtures, they're not going away. And I don't think that it's politically likely that any section of the United States tries to take that away. Therefore, the deficit engine itself is locked in. And when we're thinking about our portfolios, we should try to understand, politically also what's going on, geopolitically what's going on. And so Bitcoin is a way to play additional aspects of our world. In addition to, if you were to just go long US stocks, maybe there's a monetary dilution aspect of that, but I think that's the play on being bullish human productivity, innovation, and all that. And so I think a good it's not that I recommend both or one in certain portions, but I like talking about both as good investments because they touch on different issues that are important, I think, for people to understand for their financial literacy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there is a lot of utility too. Like Dustin was debanked, so you had a lot of utility and being in, Bitcoin, and like I think a lot of people forget about that when they don't experience it themselves. Like that also helps with the market, realizing that, it is giving you like freedom of your money. So, do you guys have any other things before we wrap up? Charlie had to drop off. He had a meeting, so he had to go earlier. But we'll wrap up unless you guys have anything else to say. Make sure to follow Nick and Dustin, of course. Any other last words, guys?
Nope. Great show as always, Nick. Nice to meet you, and we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah, see you guys next week, next Tuesday at 6. Thank you so much for coming, Nick. Please come back again. We'd love to have you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I had a great time.
Bye, you guys.
Arch Lending is building the most transparent borrowing experience in crypto. Get industry-leading rates from 8.49% APR, borrow against Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana, and receive USD or USDC within minutes. Your assets stay protected with qualified custody, no rehypothecation, and verifiable segregated addresses. As your collateral grows, unlock more liquidity, adjust your line anytime, and extend your term with a single click. And with 24/7 white glove support, you're never on your own. Arch Lending, simple tiers, public pricing, market-leading rates at every size. Check them out at archlending.com/debates. Again, it's archlending.com/debates. Use code debates to get 50 basis points off your APR on your crypto back loan today.